Turns and gets down to business for the lame duck session. What are you hearing about the influence of the Tea Party as people return and assess the midterm elections?
Well, I don't know that I'm hearing anything about them specifically other than to recognize the factor that they played in the election. There are several new senators who had tremendous Tea Party support. And I think it's been a healthy exercise for our country because it's focused really on the real problems that we face fiscally and probably institutionally in Washington, kind of the bad habits that Washington has that are challenged by the Tea Party.
Some of the folks who ran with Tea Party support in the Senate races across the country cited Jim DeMint and you as two of their most inspirational figures in the Senate. I know Joe Miller did up in Alaska. Not all those folks won, though. Do you think their message is still getting through? Oh, yeah.
Look, the basic Tea Party message is the government's too big. It's outside the bounds of what it was intended. And the spending and the debt are a real risk for the future liberties of American people. That resonates across a broad spectrum of America. And so I don't think anybody that lost on the basis of that's what they embraced. They lost because they were beat on other things as well. So I think it's been a healthy thing for America to come back and look at what the basic problems are that are challenging us.
Senator Tom Coburn is our guest. You can join the conversation. Democrats, 202-737-0002. Republicans, 202-737-0001. And independent callers, 202-628-0205. Yesterday, the Republican caucus in the Senate decided to have a self-imposed ban on earmarks. You are a supporter of that decision. Yeah, talk to us about how that gained momentum, because that wasn't always the most popular viewpoint on Capitol Hill.
Well, no, it wasn't. If you go back to 2005, when Bridge to Nowhere was challenged in the Senate, when we really started this fight on earmarks and the negative aspects of earmarks, it's taken 5 years for the American people to see what is really there. It was interesting, a poll came out, 73% of independents, 52% of Democrats, and 7% of Republicans who were polled are adamantly opposed to the earmarking process. And it's because of the consequential bad things that are associated with them. Earmarks in and of themselves are not a bad thing. But what it's caused us to do and the result of earmarks has been tremendously negative for the country in terms of its budget.
Then why not reform the system? Senators, members of the House who do support earmarks, those who are coming out and saying, well, especially some of the Democrats who are saying it's not time to just throw them out altogether yet, say reform the system, get rid of corruption, get rid of pork spending.
Well, they are the corruption. That's the problem. Is they are the dollar trade that causes people to vote in a way different than what they would vote for the best interests of the country. The way you get rid of the corruption is start asking Congress to do its job, which is to oversight the federal government. What happens is we allow special interests to influence where money is spent. So if you're well-heeled and well-connected, or you're connected into a campaign organization and can raise money, you can bet that you're going to get a benefit financially out of the federal government. Well, that has nothing to do with a free society and a republic form of government. And so what has to happen is you have to stop that process, and then the consequences of not having money go directly as where members of Congress might want it, you have to oversight the executive branch agencies to make sure they're doing a good job.
The New York Times editorial today says that blasting earmarks is a way to avoid a more serious discussion of the real mix of difficult spending cuts and tax increases that are the only way to dig the country out of a financial hole.
There's no question we have to do significant spending cuts. I think they're wrong. We don't have to raise taxes. If you look at all the waste, all the fraud, all the abuse, you could knock $450 or $500 billion per year out of the federal government when you include duplication. So the assumption is that we have a revenue problem, I think, is wrong. It's the first step. among many to get our house in order. But when in fact bills are passed because people are bought off by earmarks to vote for a bill they otherwise wouldn't vote for, you're not going to solve that problem. So, you know, I disagree with the New York Times, and that's not unusual. I do that fairly often. But you know, this is the currency. Earmarks are the gateway drug to overspending. They're one of the reasons we've gotten in trouble. Just think for a minute. For 200 years, this country didn't do earmarks. This is a new phenomenon. It started in the 70s and grew. Reagan vetoed a transportation bill that had, I think, 120 earmarks in it because it had 120 earmarks in it. So this is a new phenomenon. We operated for 200 years without members of Congress connecting to the well-heeled, well-connected, well-financed groups in this country to give them a benefit. Remember, most earmarks are never competitively bid. They're not sunlighted. There's no transparency on them. And so consequently, what is seen, and the most important thing about earmarks is they undermine people's confidence in Washington. And what we need to do is, if our country's going to succeed and get out of this jam we're in, we have to rebuild confidence in Washington, not continue to tear it down.
Some of the Democrats who say that earmarks can be a way to help projects back home that congressional members maybe have more of a handle on than the feds do, say and complain that the authorization bills just aren't getting passed, that using the authorization bills as a mechanism to get projects pushed through, as Senator McCain has said they could be, just isn't realistic because the Senate just isn't moving forward and working on it.
It's interesting. The Democrats are in control, so if they wanted to put them through, they've had a massive majorities for the last 2 years and 4 years. If they, in fact, wanted them to get through, they would have gotten through. It's a priority. You know, I think that's a fairly lame excuse. The fact is most earmarks are people don't want to be highlighted, don't want to be sunshine because they're not necessarily a priority. Remember also, a good portion of what we take money from Americans and then resend it back out, if you look at Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, the enumerated powers aren't within it. So we're talking about how we, you know, all the way from building a parking lot or for a museum in Omaha, Nebraska, or a sculpture garden in Seattle, you have trouble finding in the Constitution the authority for the federal government to be involved in that. And that's what you see. And look, we're in such a deep hole right now. Unless we start changing the behavior in Washington, I'm not sure we get out of it.
Let's go to some of our calls. People looking to talk to you. Christian, Republican caller in New York. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Good morning.
You're welcome.
Senator, you mentioned civil liberties, and really, I got to be honest. You know, I believe that neither of the two major parties are interested in civil liberties, and you see that with this airport thing that's going on. You know, they got us getting blasted with X-rays, taking nude pictures. They have us getting fondled up, and it's just, you know, I think that I want to ask you, will you help me and many Americans who care about civil liberties in protesting and standing against these measures? Because this whole war on terror thing has just taken our civil liberties, and they're almost gone due to this war on terror.
Well, I think there's a balance. You know, is we have allowed the threat of terrorism to cause us to do some pretty significant things. And as somebody that goes through those systems twice a week, every week, I'm not happy about what we're doing. But I'm not sure that you've actually lost a civil liberty if, in fact, there's a threat for safety in terms of transportation, because there's a lot of other ways to be transported around this country. We opt to fly because it's fast and fairly inexpensive compared to others. And I'm not happy. I opt out every time going through the new scanners simply because I don't want the medical exposure that's associated with them. And so I go through the pat-down in Tulsa and almost every other airport where they have those scanners rather than the magnetometers. I think you raise a very interesting point, though. If we have to give up freedom to be free, what have we gained?
Senator Coburn is a guest. He is a physician specializing in family medicine, obstetrics, and allergy treatment. He was a member of the U.S. House from 1995 to 2001 and stuck to his term limits pledge. You served 3 terms, and then were elected to the Senate, and you said no more than 2 terms here.
That's right. This is my last term coming up.
Okay. Let's go on to our next call. Arnold, Democratic caller in Tennessee. Good morning, Arnold.
Good morning. How are you?
We're fine, thank you.
Good morning.
Senator Coburn.
Yes, sir. I would like to share with you, excuse me, I stutter slightly. My name is Arnold Joseph White, and I have co-authored a book entitled Divine 9/11 Intervention. And you can read and download this book for free at lovegodisLove.org. I won't say anything else, about that, but I recently ran across a blog that said, it had an interesting statement. It said that 50% of Americans believe that our elections, that our electoral process is broken, and the other 50%, they believe that it's fixed. The segment that was on before you about the relevance of the leadership elections, we need to make sure that all of our elections have relevance by making them honest.
Well, it's about a 50% turnout the last time. The 50% that think that they're relevant, obviously, are the part of the ones that voted, and probably the 50% that didn't, probably didn't. Look, our problem is creating trust and confidence that we're going to do the best right thing in the long term for the American people. And Washington is an interesting place because the motivations are not always what they seem. I think over the last 10 or 15, maybe even 20 years, apathy has grown in our country. And what I think we ought to be is about restoring some trust and, taking on issues that people would say don't do that if you're going to want to continue to be elected to an office. You're politically not correct if you do it. But I think I think everything ought to be on the table, and we ought to have free and open debate in our country, and we ought to have those people that are willing to defend those minority positions if they think they're wrong. So I think honest and open debate, and I would like to see us get away from long-term service. I think I'm a big believer in term limits. I think that helps us. And I think it's important that we bring people with the experience in the world to Congress, and I'm not sure we always do that. And I think that's part of the reason that some of those, what I would consider very stupid things, are done in Washington, D.C.
Senator Tom Coburn of Oklahoma, a story from Tulsa World, back from your home state. It says, Coburn says he talks to President Obama, prays for him weekly. And the story from last month says that Senator Coburn might not think much of the Obama administration, but the Oklahoma Republican apparently still has some regard for President Barack Obama, the man. I still talk to him once a month, Coburn told the Tulsa Republican Club on Friday. I try to write him an encouraging note once a month. I pray for him every week. He's our president, and we need to be praying for him to make good decisions and to have clear thoughts so he can see what's actually happening. Can you talk to us about your philosophy of relating to the president?
Well, it's not just the president. I think reconciliation and elimination of alienation. Countries go to war because they're alienated. I think when you can't talk to somebody and you can't have a relationship with them, and I really like President Obama as a person, an individual. We became friends in the Senate. And I'm probably out there probably as much as anybody in terms of opposition to his policy. But I think he's a very unique, smart, bright individual.